My name is Craig Matthews, 58 years old and a retired firefighter with burn scars that tell stories across my face and arms. Raised my boy Michael by myself after losing my wife when he was 14. Always thought we had an unbreakable bond until he brought home Jessica. First time I met her, she looked at my scarred face and laughed. "At least you don't need a Halloween mask, you're scary enough as it is." That cut deeper than any flame ever could. But when I finally met her parents at that engagement party, they took one look at me, burst into tears, and everything changed. Let me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had life throw you an unexpected twist that changed everything. I dedicated 25 years of my life to the Chicago Fire Department. It wasn't just a job, it was my identity, my purpose, my community. Every shift brought different challenges, but we faced them together. My crew becoming the family I relied on through the toughest days. The warehouse fire that changed everything happened on a Tuesday night in October, 15 years ago. The call came in around 10 p.m. Commercial building, multiple floors, possible occupants. When we arrived, flames were already tearing through the third floor, and thick black smoke poured from broken windows. My lieutenant sent our team to sweep the upper floors while other crews tackled the blaze from below. The heat was unbearable, even through our gear. Visibility dropped to nothing as we pushed deeper. That's when we heard screaming from behind a collapsed doorway. I remember making the call to go in alone while my partner maintained radio contact. The ceiling was groaning above me, ready to give. I found a teenage girl unconscious near a window, scooped her up and turned back toward the door. That's when everything went wrong. The ceiling collapsed in a shower of burning debris. I covered the girl with my body as superheated air and burning material hit us. My gear protected most of me, but my face and arms took the worst of it, where my protective equipment had gaps. The pain was immediate and overwhelming, but somehow I managed to carry her through the flames to safety before collapsing. I woke up 3 days later in the burn unit, wrapped in bandages with tubes everywhere. The doctors were straight with me. Third-degree burns over 20% of my body, mostly concentrated on the left side of my face, neck, and both arms. They told me I'd need multiple surgeries and skin grafts. My life as I knew it had gone up in flames along with that warehouse. My wife Amanda was my rock during those first months of recovery. She never flinched at the sight of my wounds, never treated me differently. "Those scars are marks of heroism," she would say, "proof that my husband runs toward danger when everyone else runs away." The physical pain was excruciating, but her love made it bearable. The surgeries, 11 of them over 2 years, helped restore function, but nothing could erase the roadmap of scars that now defined my appearance. Children would stare in grocery stores. Adults would quickly look away when I caught their eye. I learned to recognize the subtle expressions of discomfort, pity, or revulsion that flashed across strangers' faces. Just as I was adjusting to my new normal, Amanda was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer. The cruel irony wasn't lost on either of us. I had survived my battle with fire, only to watch her fight a war against an enemy inside her own body. She approached it with the same quiet strength she'd shown during my recovery. But 16 months later, she was gone. Michael was only 14. Raising a teenage boy as a newly widowed, disfigured father was the hardest job I'd ever taken on. Michael was dealing with his own grief while navigating the social minefield of high school. I could see he struggled sometimes with how others reacted to my appearance. There were friends who never came over twice, parents who maintained polite distance at school functions. But Michael never complained, never showed shame. Instead, we grew closer through our shared loss. I threw myself into being both mother and father to him. Despite my injuries, I stayed with the fire department on modified duty training rookies and handling community outreach. Michael thrived academically, joining the debate team and computer club. Our evenings were filled with homework at the kitchen table, weekend fishing trips, and marathon movie nights. When Michael earned a full scholarship to study computer science at Berkeley, I felt like we'd somehow made it through the darkest valleys. The day I drove him to college, we both pretended not to cry when saying goodbye. "Dad," he said, hugging me tightly, "everything I am is because of you." Those words carried me through the emptiness of returning to our house alone. Michael's college years brought a gradual shift in our relationship. Calls became less frequent as he built his new life in California. I understood. He was finding his independence, making his mark. After graduation, he landed a job at a tech company in San Francisco. I flew out for his graduation, but noticed he seemed nervous introducing me to his new friends. It was subtle, but I recognized the familiar discomfort my appearance often triggered. Over the next 5 years, our connection frayed further. Visits home became yearly events calls spaced further apart. I kept busy with my retirement, volunteering with a burn survivors support group and taking up woodworking. But the house felt emptier with each passing year. The tight bond we'd forged through tragedy seemed to be weakening with distance and time. Then came the call that changed everything. Michael, sounding more excited than I'd heard him in years, announced he'd met someone special. Her name was Jessica. He'd been dating her for 6 months, and they were engaged. The news hit me like a lightning bolt. 6 months seemed fast, and I was stunned he hadn't mentioned her before. But I swallowed my concerns and focused on his happiness. "When can I meet her?" I asked, already looking up flights. There was a pause before Michael answered, "Well, we're pretty busy with work, but maybe next month." Something in his hesitation sent a warning signal, but I ignored it. My son was engaged, and nothing, not even his apparent reluctance, would keep me from meeting the woman who had captured his heart. The flight to San Francisco gave me plenty of time to imagine what Jessica might be like. Michael had been vague in his descriptions. She worked in marketing for a tech company, came from a good family, and was really into fitness and social events. I pictured someone ambitious and outgoing, a good match for my intelligent, somewhat reserved son. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't self-conscious about meeting her. Over the years, I'd grown accustomed to the reactions my appearance provoked, but they never stopped hurting. I wanted so badly to make a good impression on the woman my son had chosen. The night before my flight, I stood before the bathroom mirror, rehearsing a natural smile that minimized how the scars pulled at the left side of my mouth. Michael had booked me a nice hotel downtown, insisting on paying for it himself. "Dad, I'm doing well now. Let me take care of this," he'd said with pride in his voice. After checking in and freshening up, I changed into my new clothes, a blue button-down shirt and khaki pants I'd bought specially for the trip. My reflection showed a tall, broad-shouldered man with silver-streaked dark hair and a face divided the right side, mostly untouched the left, a landscape of rippled skin and uneven texture. I straightened my collar and headed out to meet my son and his fiancée. The restaurant Michael had chosen was upscale, white tablecloths, soft lighting, and waitstaff that moved like shadows. Michael was already there, pacing near the entrance. When he saw me, his face lit up with genuine happiness, and for a moment, he was my little boy again. We embraced tightly. "You look great, Dad," he said, though his eyes darted briefly to my scars before focusing on my new shirt. "Where's the lucky lady?" I asked, looking past him. "She's at our table. Come on, she's excited to meet you." As we walked through the restaurant, I noticed Michael's nervous energy, adjusting his tie, checking his phone, clearing his throat. When we reached the table, a stunning young woman with sleek dark hair and perfect makeup looked up from her phone. She didn't stand immediately. "Jessica, this is my dad, Craig." Michael said, his voice pitched slightly higher than normal. Jessica's eyes widened almost imperceptibly as she took in my appearance. To her credit, she recovered quickly, standing and extending a manicured hand. "Nice to finally meet you, Mr. Matthews. Michael has told me so much about you." Her grip was limp, her smile tight. I'd seen that expression countless times, the polite mask people wore when confronted with my scars. I pretended not to notice. "The pleasure's all mine," I replied warmly. "And please call me Craig." Throughout dinner, Jessica dominated the conversation. She talked about her job at a marketing firm, their circle of friends, the exclusive gym they attended, and the neighborhoods where they were house hunting. She name-dropped constantly: restaurants with celebrity chefs, tech CEOs at their company parties, exclusive vacation spots. Michael nodded enthusiastically at everything she said, occasionally glancing at me as if seeking approval. I tried to engage, asking questions about their relationship, how they met, what they enjoyed doing together. "We met at a charity gala," Jessica explained. "Michael's company had a table and my firm was handling the PR. He was the only one who could intelligently discuss both the tech aspects and the social impact metrics." She patted his hand possessively. When I tried sharing stories about Michael's childhood, his science fair victory in 6th grade, the summer we built a treehouse together, Jessica would smile politely, then skillfully redirect the conversation back to their current life. "That sounds charming," she'd say before turning to Michael. "Did you tell your dad about the Napa trip we're planning with the Hendersons? His vineyard has that limited release Cabernet the Wall Street Journal featured." I noticed how Michael seemed to transform in her presence. adopting her vocabulary, mirroring her gestures, laughing at references I didn't understand. It was as though he was playing a role in a play where I didn't have a script. Midway through dinner, I excused myself to use the restroom. As I was returning, I paused just out of sight of our table when I heard Jessica's lowered voice. "At least you don't need a Halloween mask, you're scary enough as it is." She laughed softly. "I mean, you could have warned me. No wonder you never showed me pictures." The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd experienced cruelty before, but never expected it from someone my son had chosen to marry. I stood frozen, blood rushing in my ears. "Jess, please," Michael whispered urgently. "He saved a girl's life. That's how he got those scars." "I'm just saying it's a lot to process over dinner. Let's change the subject before he comes back." I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and returned to the table with a neutral expression. The conversation continued, but something had fundamentally changed. Each smile Jessica directed my way now seemed laced with revulsion. Each time Michael nervously filled a silence, I felt the growing distance between us. The ride back to my hotel was filled with superficial chatter. Michael asked about neighbors back home, mentioned the weather forecast, anything to avoid real conversation. Jessica checked her phone repeatedly, occasionally showing Michael something that made them both laugh privately. "We should do brunch tomorrow," Michael suggested as we pulled up to my hotel. It sounded more like an obligation than a desire. "I'd like that," I said, then added, "Maybe just the two of us. I'd love some father-son time." Jessica answered before Michael could. "That's perfect. I have a spin class and brunch with the girls anyway." In my hotel room, I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, Jessica's words echoing in my head. "You're scary enough as it is." 25 years of service, 11 surgeries, and a lifetime of stares reduced to a Halloween joke. But what hurt more was Michael's weak defense, his apparent embarrassment. I thought about calling my old friend Frank back at the station, but it was too late in Chicago. Instead, I stood at the window watching San Francisco's lights shimmer through a light fog, wondering if I'd lost my son to a world where appearance mattered more than character. Despite the pain, I decided to stay another day. Maybe I could still reach Michael, help him see what he was doing. I wouldn't give up on our relationship without trying. My boy was still in there somewhere beneath the designer clothes and rehearsed laughter. I just needed to find him. The next morning, I met Michael at a coffee shop near his office. He arrived wearing a tailored suit that probably cost more than my monthly pension, hair perfectly styled. But as he sat across from me, I caught glimpses of the boy I raised, the way he still stirred his coffee counterclockwise, the thoughtful furrow of his brow. "About last night," he began awkwardly. "Jessica sometimes makes jokes when she's nervous. She didn't mean anything by it." I looked at my son directly. "Michael, I've heard comments about my appearance for 15 years. I've developed a pretty good sense for when someone is being cruel versus nervous." He sighed, shoulders slumping slightly. "She's under a lot of pressure. Her family has expectations, and she's trying to make sure everything is perfect." "Tell me about her family," I said, changing tactics. "You've hardly mentioned them." Michael shifted uncomfortably. "Her dad's in real estate development. They're pretty well off. Her mom does a lot of charity work." His answers were vague, rehearsed. "And they're okay with a whirlwind engagement. They're traditional in some ways. Once we decided Jessica wanted to make it official quickly." He glanced at his watch. "Hey, why don't you come over for dinner tonight? Our place more relaxed. You can see where we live." I agreed, though something felt off about the entire conversation. It was as if Michael was reading from a script, careful not to reveal too much. As he stood to leave, I noticed how he scanned the coffee shop as though worried about being seen with me. "I'm proud of you, son," I said impulsively, catching his arm. "Always have been." Something flickered in his eyes, recognition, guilt, I couldn't tell which, before he gave me a quick hug. "Thanks, Dad. See you tonight." I spent the afternoon walking through San Francisco, trying to understand the changes in my son. The city was beautiful, but felt alien. All steep hills, sleek buildings, and people moving with purposeful energy. Everyone seemed dressed for a photo shoot, engrossed in their phones. I wondered if Michael felt pressure to fit into this glossy world. Around 2 o'clock, I found myself near the Presidio and decided to walk through the park. The slower pace and natural beauty calmed my thoughts. I reflected on proud moments from Michael's childhood, teaching him to ride a bike, cheering at his high school graduation, helping him move into his college dorm. We'd been through so much together. Surely that bond couldn't be erased by 6 months with Jessica. Before heading to their apartment, I stopped at a small boutique and purchased a handcrafted serving bowl as a housewarming gift. The young saleswoman looked directly at my face while wrapping it, neither staring nor avoiding my scars. That simple courtesy lifted my spirits. Michael and Jessica's apartment was in a modern high-rise with a doorman and elevator that required a key card. The sleek, minimalist space boasted floor-to-ceiling windows with spectacular city views. Everything looked expensive, but impersonal, like a magazine spread rather than a home. "What a beautiful place," I said sincerely as Michael gave me a tour. "Jessica has a great eye for design," he replied. "She worked with an interior decorator from Los Angeles." I noticed the carefully curated bookshelves, the abstract artwork, the designer furniture. What I didn't see were personal photographs. No graduation pictures, no candid moments, nothing from Michael's life before Jessica. There was one professional portrait of them together on a side table, both looking flawless and serious. Jessica was in the kitchen when we finished the tour, arranging takeout onto serving platters. She'd clearly made no effort to cook despite the dinner invitation. She greeted me with the same tight smile as before, keeping the kitchen island between us like a barrier. "I hope you like Thai food, Mr. Matthews," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Craig, please." "And yes, I love Thai food," I replied, offering the gift bag. "Just a small housewarming present." She accepted it with visible surprise, as though she hadn't expected such a gesture. When she unwrapped the serving bowl, her thank you sounded genuine for the first time. Dinner was less tense than the previous night, but still strained. Jessica asked polite questions about Chicago, though her eyes often drifted to her phone beside her plate. Michael tried too hard, laughing too loudly at minor comments, refilling wine glasses before they were empty. As Jessica cleared the plates, I noticed a stack of envelopes on a desk in the corner. On top was an ornate invitation with gold lettering, "Celebration of Michael and Jessica's engagement." "Is that for your engagement party?" I asked innocently. Michael froze wine bottle mid-pour. "Oh yeah, it's just a small thing next weekend," Jessica returned quickly. "My parents insisted. You know how mothers get about these things." She shot Michael a look I couldn't interpret. "Well, I'd love to attend," I said, watching their reactions carefully. "I'm here for the week anyway." The silent communication between them was palpable. Jessica's slight head shake, Michael's pleading glance back. "Of course you're invited, Dad," Michael finally said. "I was going to tell you tonight. It's at Jessica's parents' house in Pacific Heights." "It's really just a formality," Jessica added quickly. "Mostly my parents' friends and business associates. Might be boring for you." Later, as Michael showed me to the guest bathroom, I overheard Jessica on the phone in their bedroom. "Yes, Mom. Michael's father situation. I know it's last minute. We can't just—" "Fine, I'll tell the planner to adjust the seating." The situation. That's what I had become. On my way out, I hugged Michael tightly, trying to communicate everything I couldn't say aloud. "I love you, son," I whispered. "Love you too, Dad," he replied, and for a moment I heard sincerity break through the facade. Back at my hotel, I called Frank, needing to hear a friendly voice. Frank and I had joined the department the same year, had been through hell and back together. She said what? Frank's outrage was comforting after a day of polite facades, and the kid just let it slide. "He's different here, Frank. It's like he's playing a part." "So what's your plan?" "Coming home early." I considered it. Walking away would be easier, less painful, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something important. "No," I decided. "I'm staying for the engagement party. I need to understand what's happening to my son." "Just remember Craig," Frank said before hanging up. "Those scars tell a story of courage. Anyone who can't see that isn't worth your time." I fell asleep thinking about courage, not the kind needed to run into burning buildings, but the kind required to stand your ground when someone tries to make you feel small. I decided to extend my hotel stay through the engagement party. The concierge was helpful in arranging the extra nights, never once letting his gaze linger uncomfortably on my scars. It reminded me that not everyone reacted with Jessica's revulsion. Michael called the next morning, but our conversation was brief and stilted. "Work is crazy this week," he explained. "Big project deadline, but I'll see you at the party Saturday." "No problem," I assured him, though it felt like another excuse to keep me at arm's length. "I'm enjoying exploring the city." Left to my own devices, I spent the days walking San Francisco's neighborhoods, each with its distinct character. The city's famous fog rolled in each morning, wrapping the streets in a soft gray blanket before burning off to reveal stunning views of the bay. I found myself taking pictures to share with my support group back home. On Wednesday evening, I discovered a flyer for a burn survivors meeting at a community center near Fisherman's Wharf. On impulse, I decided to attend. The group welcomed me warmly, men and women of all ages with stories etched into their skin, just like mine. There was an immediate understanding, a shorthand that didn't require explanation. "First time in San Francisco?" asked Diane, a woman in her 40s with burn scars across her neck and chest. "Visiting my son," I explained. "He's getting married." "And the future in-law situation?" she asked knowingly. I hesitated before admitting his fiancée suggested I'd make a good Halloween decoration. The collective wince around the circle was followed by nods of recognition. These people understood the casual cruelty, the thoughtless comments, the stares. For 2 hours we shared stories, strategies, and strength. I left feeling more centered than I had since arriving in California. Thursday afternoon, I found myself drawn to a firehouse in the Mission District. Firefighters share a universal brotherhood, and I was welcomed like family once I mentioned my years of service. The captain, a woman named Rodriguez with 20 years' experience, invited me to join them for dinner. Sitting around the station table sharing firefighter stories, I felt like myself for the first time since arriving. These people spoke my language, understood the calling that had shaped my life. When I mentioned the warehouse fire that scarred me, Captain Rodriguez nodded solemnly. "Takes special courage to go back in when things are going south," she said simply. "Not everyone has it." That evening I spent time researching Jessica's family online. Her father, Robert Wilson, appeared in numerous articles about real estate development in the Bay Area. Wilson Development had transformed entire neighborhoods, built luxury high-rises, and recently expanded into commercial properties. Something about the name tickled my memory, but I couldn't place it. On Friday, I visited a department store to purchase a suit for the engagement party. The salesman was professional, helping me find a style that flattered my build while accommodating the limited range of motion in my left arm. Another souvenir from the fire. "Special occasion?" he asked while marking alterations. "My son's engagement party," I replied. "Meeting the future in-laws." "Congratulations," he said sincerely. "They're lucky to have you in the family." That simple kindness from a stranger nearly undid me after a week of feeling like an embarrassment to my own son. Back at the hotel, Michael called with last-minute suggestions for tomorrow's party. "It's black tie," he began awkwardly, "and Jessica's family is pretty traditional. Maybe don't mention the firefighting stuff too much. Her dad's associates are mainly finance and tech people." Each word felt like another small betrayal. Don't talk about my career, the work that had defined my adult life, that had cost me my face but saved countless others. "I'll try not to bore anyone," I said, unable to keep the hurt from my voice. "Dad, that's not what I meant." "It's fine, Michael. I understand." But I didn't. Not really. When had my son become ashamed of who I was? That night I laid out my new suit, polished my shoes, and gave myself a pep talk in the mirror. "You've faced burning buildings. You can face this." But as I traced the rippled landscape of scars across my cheek, I wondered if any courage would be enough for tomorrow's challenge. Saturday dawned clear and bright. I spent the morning reviewing what I'd learned about the Wilsons online. Robert's rise from middle-class contractor to real estate mogul, Catherine's leadership of several prominent charities, their other daughter Emily's nursing career. I still couldn't shake the feeling that I'd heard the name before, possibly in connection with Chicago. As the taxi approached their Pacific Heights mansion that evening, nerves twisted my stomach. The sprawling Mediterranean-style home overlooked the bay, its circular driveway filled with luxury cars. Uniformed valets assisted arriving guests while security personnel discreetly checked invitations. I straightened my tie, took a deep breath, and stepped into what felt like another world entirely. The Wilson mansion was even more impressive inside. Soaring ceilings, marble floors, artwork that probably cost more than my house. A string quartet played in one corner of the massive foyer, while uniformed staff circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. At least 70 guests already mingled in elegant evening wear, their conversations creating a sophisticated hum. I felt profoundly out of place despite my new suit and careful grooming. This wasn't just wealth, it was generational privilege, an entire social ecosystem with rules I'd never learned. For a moment I considered leaving before anyone noticed me, sparing Michael the discomfort of my presence. Before I could retreat, Jessica appeared at the top of a sweeping staircase. She looked stunning in a designer gown, her dark hair swept up elegantly. She spotted me immediately, her practiced smile faltering for just a second before she descended. "Mr. Matthews," she said, air kissing near my cheek but carefully avoiding contact. "So glad you could make it." "Thank you for including me," I replied politely. "Your family home is beautiful." "Yes, Daddy had it built when I was 10. Come, let me introduce you to some friends before the formal announcements." She led me through the crowd, keeping a calculated distance while making introductions. "This is Michael's father," she would say, never using my name, never mentioning my career. I noticed how she positioned me, always in darker corners, always briefly before moving on. Michael appeared 15 minutes later looking uncomfortable in his tuxedo. He hugged me with genuine warmth, but kept glancing around as if monitoring reactions. "You look great, Dad," he said, though his eyes betrayed his anxiety. "You too, son. Very sharp." We made awkward small talk until Jessica reclaimed him for a quick hello with the Stevensons, potential investors, darling. I found myself alone holding a champagne flute I hadn't tasted, watching my son navigate this unfamiliar world. A waiter directed me to my assigned table in a far corner of the ballroom, away from the main family tables. The placement wasn't subtle. I recognized the silent message present, but not featured included, but not showcased. I sat alone while other tables filled with laughing guests. Snippets of conversation drifted my way. Stock options, vacation homes, private schools. A distinguished couple at the next table glanced at my scars, then whispered to each other behind their programs. Through the growing crowd, I caught my first glimpse of Jessica's parents. Robert Wilson was tall and silver-haired with the confident bearing of a man accustomed to power. Catherine Wilson was elegantly slim, her blonde hair perfectly styled, diamonds glittering at her throat. They were working the room like political candidates, stopping at each group for just the right amount of time. I was contemplating a strategic retreat to the restroom when the room suddenly hushed. Robert Wilson had taken the microphone at the front of the ballroom. "Catherine and I are delighted to welcome you to our home to celebrate Jessica's engagement to Michael Matthews," he began smoothly. "In the 6 months they've been together, we've watched Michael become part of our family. His intelligence and ambition make him the perfect match for our daughter." As he continued praising the couple, Catherine Wilson's gaze drifted across the room in a final survey of their perfectly orchestrated event. When her eyes met mine, something extraordinary happened. She froze, champagne glass halfway to her lips, her face draining of color. She clutched her husband's arm with such urgency that he paused mid-sentence to look at her. "Robert," I heard her say despite the distance. "Robert, it's him." Robert Wilson followed her gaze to me, his expression transforming from confusion to shock. The microphone nearly slipped from his hand. For several heartbeats, time seemed suspended as the Wilsons stared at me across the crowded room. Then, to the astonishment of their guests, they began moving toward me, not walking, but pushing urgently through the crowd. Confused murmurs rose around me as I stood uncertainly. What was happening? Had I violated some unspoken protocol? Was I about to be escorted out? When the Wilsons reached me, Catherine's eyes were brimming with tears. Robert looked as though he'd seen a ghost. "It's you," Catherine whispered, "the firefighter from Chicago, the one who saved our Emily." The pieces suddenly clicked into place. The warehouse fire, the teenage girl I'd carried out, the property developer who owned the building. Wilson Development had been expanding to the Midwest. Robert Wilson's voice broke as he said, "You're the man who ran back into the flames when everyone else said it was too dangerous. You saved our youngest daughter's life." Before I could respond, they both embraced me. Catherine openly weeping against my shoulder, Robert gripping my hand with both of his. Their reaction drew every eye in the room. "We never knew your name," Robert continued, his composure cracking. "The hospital said you were in critical condition. By the time Emily was released, you had been transferred to a specialized burn unit. We tried to find you to thank you, but the department would only say you were recovering." The ballroom had fallen completely silent, the string quartet forgotten mid-song. Jessica pushed through the crowd, Michael close behind, both looking completely bewildered. "Mom, Dad?" "What's going on?" Jessica demanded. Catherine turned to her, tears streaming down her face. "Jessica, this is the firefighter who saved Emily during the Chicago warehouse fire. The one who suffered these burns protecting your sister." Jessica's perfect composure shattered. "What? That's not. He never said." She looked at me with new eyes, horror and recognition dawning simultaneously. Michael stepped forward, confusion etched on his face. "Dad, what are they talking about?" Before I could answer, a commotion at the entrance drew everyone's attention. A young woman with auburn hair rushed into the ballroom, her eyes searching wildly until they found me. "Someone called and said you were here," she said breathlessly. "Is it really you?" I recognized her immediately despite the 15 years that had passed. The same eyes, though now in a grown woman's face. Emily Wilson, the teenager I'd carried from the flames. She crossed the room and stood before me, her hand reaching up tentatively toward my scarred cheek. "I've imagined meeting you so many times," she whispered. "You look exactly how I remembered. You saved my life." The silence in the ballroom was absolute as Emily continued, her voice growing stronger. "I was trapped in Dad's warehouse during a school project. Everyone ran when this fire broke out, but I got disoriented in the smoke. This man," she turned to address the crowd, "carried me through collapsing floors and burning debris. He used his own body to shield me from falling beams. These scars," she gently touched my face, "he earned these saving me." Robert Wilson took the floor again, his arm around my shoulders. I never knew the identity of the brave man who saved my daughter, only that he had been severely injured in the process. Tonight, by some miracle, he's here in our home, the father of the man our Jessica is going to marry. The irony was lost on no one, least of all Jessica, who stood white-faced and rigid as whispers rippled through the crowd. Michael looked shell-shocked, his eyes darting between his fiancée and me. Catherine wiped her tears and addressed the room. "Please continue enjoying the evening. Our family needs a few moments." With that, Robert and Catherine guided me toward a private study off the main hall, Emily following close behind. As we passed Jessica, Catherine paused. "You'll join us, of course," she said in a tone that permitted no refusal. "And Michael." The ornate study door closed behind us, sealing out the buzz of speculation that had erupted in the ballroom. The study was a masculine space of leather and dark wood walls lined with books and photographs. As we entered, my eyes were drawn immediately to a large framed photo on Robert's desk, a much younger Emily in a hospital bed, her face partially bandaged. It was dated 2 weeks after the warehouse fire. "We keep this as a reminder," Robert explained, following my gaze, "of how quickly everything we value can be taken away, and of the debt we can never repay." Emily hadn't let go of my hand since we'd entered the room. "I became a burn trauma nurse because of you," she said. "Every day I work with patients who are going through what you experienced. I tell them about the firefighter who saved me, how his scars represent the greatest kind of courage." "I don't understand," Jessica interrupted, her voice tight with confusion and embarrassment. "How did none of you know it was him? Surely you saw pictures of Michael's father." Michael shifted uncomfortably. "I never showed you photos, Jess, and Dad doesn't use social media." He couldn't meet my eyes as he admitted, "I didn't even have any recent pictures of him to show." The implication hung heavily in the air. My son had deliberately kept me invisible. Robert turned to Jessica, his expression hardening. "A better question might be how you could treat this man with such disrespect without knowing who he was. Though I'm not sure it would matter who he was. That kind of behavior reflects poorly on how we raised you." Catherine's hand flew to her mouth. "Jessica Eileen Wilson, what have you done?" Jessica's composure cracked entirely. How was I supposed to know Michael never talked about his father except to say he was some retired firefighter from Chicago? And when he showed up looking like that, I just... "Like what?" Emily challenged, her voice sharp. "Like a hero. Like someone who suffered permanent disfigurement saving a stranger's life." "Please finish your thought." Jessica faltered under her sister's gaze. "I didn't mean... It was just a stupid joke." "What joke, Robert demanded. Michael spoke up, his voice barely audible. "Jessica said Dad didn't need a Halloween mask because he was scary enough already." The silence that followed was devastating. Catherine closed her eyes as if in pain while Robert's face flushed with anger and shame. "I raised you better than this," Catherine finally said to Jessica. "We owe this man everything, our Emily's life, and this is how our daughter treats him." Emily was less restrained. "Do you have any idea what burn survivors endure? The pain, the surgeries, the stares. Every day I work with patients fighting to rebuild their lives and you make Halloween jokes. You're pathetic." Jessica began to cry, carefully constructed makeup streaking down her cheeks. "I didn't know. How could I possibly have known? That's the point," I said quietly, speaking for the first time since entering the study. "You shouldn't need to know someone's story to treat them with basic human dignity." All eyes turned to me as I continued. "I've lived with these scars for 15 years. I've seen every possible reaction: fear, pity, disgust, curiosity. It stops hurting eventually, except when it comes from family." I looked directly at Michael. "That never stops hurting." Michael stepped forward, tears streaming down his face. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I was a coward. I let her comments slide because I wanted to fit into her world. I started seeing you through her eyes instead of my own. There's no excuse for that." "You're right," I agreed, my voice steady. "There isn't." Robert cleared his throat. "Craig, I can't begin to express our gratitude or our shame at how you've been treated. Please know that you will always have a place of honor in this family." "I appreciate that, Mr. Wilson. But right now I need a moment with my son, alone." Understanding the Wilsons escorted a still sobbing Jessica from the study, Emily squeezing my hand one last time before leaving. When the door closed, Michael and I faced each other in silence. "I don't even know where to start," he finally said, voice breaking. "Neither do I." I moved to the window, looking out at the twinkling lights of San Francisco Bay. "When did I become something to hide, Michael? When did my face become more important than everything we've been through together?" He joined me at the window, shoulders slumped in defeat. "It happened so gradually I barely noticed. Jessica's world was so different, all appearance and connections. I wanted to belong there so badly. Every time I mentioned you, she'd make these little comments about humble beginnings and social adjustments. I started editing my own history. And tonight, the seating arrangement, the instructions not to talk about firefighting." Michael wiped his eyes. "She said it would make her parents' friends uncomfortable. God, the irony. You know what hurts most?" I turned to face him directly. "Not her cruelty. I've dealt with worse from strangers. It's that you stood by and let it happen. The boy I raised would never have let anyone speak that way about someone he loved." "You're right." His voice was barely audible. "I betrayed everything you taught me. I became someone I don't recognize, someone I don't like." We stood in silence, 15 years of shared history hanging between us. Camping trips, late-night talks, the grief we'd weathered together after losing Amanda. "What happens now?" Michael finally asked. I sighed deeply. "That's up to you, son. I'll always love you. Nothing changes that. But I won't be around someone who's ashamed of me. I deserve better. So do you." Before he could respond, a soft knock at the door interrupted us. Emily peeked in hesitantly. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's something you should know. Jessica and my parents are having it out in the library. It's getting ugly, and I thought you might want to leave before it becomes a spectacle. I can show you a side exit." Michael looked torn. "I should probably stay, deal with this." I nodded, suddenly exhausted by the evening's emotional whiplash. "I think that's wise. We can talk tomorrow when things have settled." Emily offered to drive me back to my hotel, as we slipped out a service entrance, avoiding the curious guests still mingling in the ballroom. Caught a final glimpse of my son standing alone in the study, looking lost in a tuxedo that no longer seemed to fit. The quiet drive back to my hotel with Emily was unexpectedly healing. Unlike the awkward silences with Michael, our conversation flowed naturally as she told me about her work at the burn trauma unit. "We have a support group for families," she explained, "teaching them how to help their loved ones adjust emotionally and physically. It's often harder for the families than the patients. They don't know what to say, how to act." "Your sister could use that group," I remarked dryly. Emily winced. "Jessica has always been obsessed with appearances. Growing up as the daughter with the scars while Jessica was the pretty one wasn't easy. But that's no excuse for how she treated you." At the hotel, Emily insisted on walking me to the lobby. "I've waited 15 years to thank you properly," she said, embracing me tightly. "You didn't just save my life that night, you gave it purpose." After she left, I sat in my hotel room watching the city lights, too wired to sleep. Around midnight, my phone rang. "Michael." "Can we talk?" His voice sounded raw, exhausted. "Not on the phone, in person." 20 minutes later, he knocked on my door. Gone was the polished young professional from the party. He looked rumpled tie, hanging loose eyes, red-rimmed. "It's over with Jessica," he said without preamble, sinking into the room's only chair. I ended it. I sat on the edge of the bed, giving him space. That's a big decision to make in one night. It wasn't just tonight. Tonight just made me see everything clearly. He ran a hand through his hair. "After you left, her parents confronted her about how she'd been treating you. She got defensive, said some horrible things, that they were embarrassed about Emily's scars too, that everyone puts on a brave face, but nobody actually wants to look at damaged people every day." I winced at the cruelty. How did they take that? Robert asked her to leave, said she could come back when she found her humanity. Michael shook his head in disbelief. "But that wasn't why I ended it. It was watching you walk away, seeing the hurt I'd caused. I suddenly realized I didn't recognize myself anymore. The person I've become with Jessica, calculating, status-obsessed, ashamed of my own father, that's not me. Or at least it's not who I want to be." People change, son. Sometimes we don't notice until we're already someone else. Do you think we can fix this us? The vulnerability in his question reminded me of the 14-year-old boy asking if we would be okay after his mother died. I think so. But it won't happen overnight. We talked until dawn, really talked for the first time in years, about his mother, about my recovery after the fire, about the gradual distance that had grown between us. As the first light broke over San Francisco Bay, we reached a new understanding. Michael would transfer back to his company's Chicago office, at least temporarily. We would rebuild our relationship on more honest ground. "I'm not running away from my problems," he clarified. "I need to remember who I am, reconnect with what matters. I lost that here." Later that morning, I received a surprising call from Robert Wilson. "I hope I'm not intruding," he began formally, "but Catherine and I would like to invite you to dinner before you return to Chicago." That evening, I found myself back at the Wilson mansion, though under very different circumstances. Gone was the crowd of strangers. Instead, just Robert, Catherine, and Emily welcomed me into their home. The formal dining room had been exchanged for a comfortable family room where we ate a simple meal. "We owe you an apology," Robert said earnestly. "Not just for Jessica's behavior, but for never finding you after the fire. We should have tried harder." "You had your daughter to worry about," I replied. "That was more important." "Emily told us she's invited you to speak to her support group tomorrow," Catherine mentioned. "That means so much to her." "It means a lot to me too," I admitted, making some meaning from all this. After dinner, Robert took me to his study, pouring us each a glass of scotch. "I have a proposal for you, Craig, something I've been considering since last night." He outlined an idea for a foundation supporting firefighters injured in the line of duty and their families, helping with medical costs not covered by insurance, rehabilitation expenses, housing modifications. "I'd like to name it after you," he concluded, "and I'd like you to help run it. Your experience would be invaluable." I was speechless at the scope of his proposal. "That's incredibly generous." "It's the least we can do. Emily survived because of you. Our family stayed whole because of your sacrifice." He hesitated. "I understand Michael is moving back to Chicago." I nodded. "We're working on rebuilding our relationship." "Good. Family is everything." He swirled his scotch thoughtfully. "Jessica is staying with friends for now. We're requiring her to do volunteer work at the burn unit if she wants our continued support. Perhaps it will teach her some compassion." 6 months later, the changes in our lives were remarkable. Michael had settled back in Chicago, taking an apartment not far from my house. We had dinner together weekly, rebuilding our bond one conversation at a time. He was seeing a therapist, working through the insecurities that had led him to value status over authenticity. The Craig Matthews Foundation for Injured Firefighters was operational with offices in both Chicago and San Francisco. I split my time between cities, working with Robert to expand our programs. Emily had become a close friend, her professional insights strengthening our support services for burn survivors. As for Jessica, I heard she had moved to New York after a brief half-hearted attempt at redemption. Some transformations require more willingness than others. On a crisp autumn evening, almost exactly 15 years after the warehouse fire, we held a benefit gala for the foundation. As I stood at the podium, addressing a room of donors, firefighters, and survivors, I caught sight of Michael in the front row, pride shining in his eyes. Beside him sat Catherine Wilson, who had become a tireless advocate for our cause, and Robert, whose resources had helped dozens of injured firefighters rebuild their lives. Scars tell stories. I concluded my speech. They're not marks of damage, but maps of survival. They remind us not of what we've lost, but what we've lived through, what we've protected, what we've saved. Later that night, as Michael and I walked to our cars, he stopped suddenly. "You know what I realized recently, Dad? I spent all that time in San Francisco trying to become someone impressive, someone who belonged in that world. But you're the most impressive person I know, just by being exactly who you are." The words healed something deep within me, not the scars on my skin, but the ones that had formed inside when my son turned away from me. We all carry different kinds of scars. Some are visible, earning immediate reaction. Others lie hidden, affecting how we move through the world. The deepest healing happens when we stop hiding either kind. I've learned that true family sees beyond appearance to the heart of who we are. They honor our scars as badges of courage, not sources of shame. And sometimes the people we least expect become the family we most need. If you've ever been judged by your appearance or felt like you had to hide parts of yourself to be accepted, I hope my story reminds you that your worth isn't determined by others' perceptions. Have you ever had someone misjudge you before, knowing your full story? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story touched you, please hit that subscribe button and like this video to help others find it too. Thank you for listening, and remember, our scars, visible or not, are proof that we've survived something worth telling.